¿Qué tal amigos? ¿Cómo están? Bienvenidos al podcast de Nación de Acción. Soy George X. En esta edición especial del show nos acompaña una de las voces más reconocidas de la industria de los deportes de acción internacional. Él es comentarista, MC y locutor de surf, skate, snowboard y también ski freestyle. Además, él ha trabajado en más de 40 ediciones de los X Games desde el año 2000 y Juegos Olímpicos desde el 2012, pero también es famoso por haber narrado el 100 perfecto de Shaun White en 2 ocasiones. Les aviso que este episodio estará en inglés, pero la versión subtitulada la podrán encontrar en nuestro canal de YouTube. Ahora sí, es un honor tener en el podcast de Nación de Acción a una verdadera institución de los deportes extremos, Brad J. All right, it's on. The legendary Brad J is in the house. Welcome to Nación de Acción, my friend. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. I mean, for, what's going on in our lives right now, I'm the best I can. I'm keeping busy. I'm surfing a lot. I'm riding my skateboard, snowboarding, riding my mountain bike. So the best of all the worlds right now. I'd like to be working, but, I can settle for action sports any day of the week.
I think it's been a great opportunity to reconnect with certain things that we neglected, right? That maybe some plans, maybe writings, maybe, I don't know, or maybe just connecting with nature, being out there in Santa Barbara, you can surf and I don't know, like reconnect with the sports as well.
Well, and, they say during the pandemic, what's gone on is all the sporting equipment everything's been sold out. Like bike companies can't get any more bikes. Surfboard companies can't make surfboards enough for everyone to have surfboards. Skateboard companies, all outdoor stuff, tents, camping, and all this stuff has gone berserk where everyone's supposed to be on lockdown, right? Well, all this stuff is selling like crazy. And, I've had to wear the mask being in California, in Southern California. I wear the mask when I go shopping, but I just been staying in the outdoors. I've been surfing a lot, riding my mountain bike as far back as I can in the mountains, just, enjoying it. And like you said, reconnecting, man, is what it's all about, because sometimes as a professional announcer, you don't get that chance. You're going from one event to another event to another event where you're home just enough time to unpack your bags, wash your clothes, and get back on the road. So being off for almost a year has been kind of cool too, in a way.
Yeah, it's a grind when you're traveling so much, especially you. But honestly, it's an honor to have you on the podcast because you have an incredible career in action sports announcing and broadcasting. And I remember hearing your voice at several X Games events and even the Olympics as well. And I believe the last time we ran into each other at an actual event was in Aspen in 2012. Because even though I continue to do commentary for ESPN Deportes, due to budget cuts, they stopped sending us to the sites and had us do everything from Bristol, Connecticut. But man, nothing compares to being right there, right?
Oh my gosh. So you had to sit there in those studios and hear me in the background at all those X Games.
Which was a great help. I'm like, okay, this is happening right now because I didn't have access to that.
That's awesome, man. That's cool to hear. You know what? Sometimes I look back and I go and check my resume and see like what I've actually done over the years. And it kind of blows me away too. I mean, I forget too, like, wow, some events that you realize you've been doing them for so long, and you start looking back, like, when did I start? Like, man, I got into radio back in 1996 is when I started doing surf reports for a radio station in Santa Barbara.
The post-grunge era?
Yeah, and it was full of definitely the grunge era. I used to ride my bike down to the beach, check it, and then go to work, like working for the city of Santa Barbara back in the day. And that was my whole break-in, and I started doing that, and radio was it. And I was like, okay, well, I'm an action sports guy. I mean, I do all the sports. I love all the sports. And I now got my feet wet announcing. So it was like the next thing for me was like, well, I should really try to break into this action sports thing. One time I was doing a radio event and had a skate ramp and dudes were skating, and I'm a skateboarder. So I was commentating, and it was kind of natural for me to be a radio guy and then do that. And so when they fired me in 1999,
from the radio station,
I was fired. I didn't even have a job, but I went out and pursued ESPN. I went out and pursued X Games. And then next thing I know, I got a phone call from somebody over at X Games. And they said, well, yeah, we'll give you a shot. We got an event coming up. Have you come out there and announce it and maybe hype the crowd. And so I did that and they liked it. And
just like that, out of the blue?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really?
Because I sent them a resume. I sent them everything I could trying to get in, and showed them, like, I used to work for Powell Pro for skateboards. I'm from the skateboard world that went into radio. So I had a big background in it. I even competed amateur skateboarding stuff in California. So that was my way to try and get in with ESPN and say, look, I know skateboarding and I'm comfortable on a mic. Can you hook me up? And I just kept sending. Finally, they got a hold of me and said they liked it and gave me a shot. I went out to an event. And they said, yeah, you're okay. But
you're okay. Come on.
Yeah.
We'll try.
We'll try you again at another event. And, you know, I'm just learning it at that point. I'd never really announced action sports. I'd only just done it, but I was comfortable on a mic. So it kept going from one event to another event till finally X Games San Francisco 2000 was coming up. And then that was the one they hired me for. And then that was it. And I was in with at that point. They tried to get me to do some winter stuff earlier in my career, but I was already doing other things. I was working in the NBA, doing basketball for the Clippers. I was working for the Dodgers in LA as their DJ. So I had all these other gigs going on. So winter really wasn't there for X Games for me, but it all started with X Games. I mean, that's the one where, I mean, you could look at radio and say it started there, but action sports wise, that break I got and that person, you know, reaching back out to me, that was an amazing situation. And I still
took your career to the next level.
Yeah. I thank that woman to this day. Michelle is her name. I still thank her because she basically gave
like
me
short
my start.
Blonde hair.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I know her.
Probably know the same. Yeah.
Yeah,
you know the same people.
I think it's the same Michelle.
Yeah, we were working with the same crew.
Super sweet. Yeah, super sweet lady.
So, here we are all these years later. Now, I wasn't part of X Games this year because it was there was no live crowd there. So, so when you're the live announcer for X Games and there's no live crowd, there's really no one to announce to for you.
So, yeah, it's tricky.
So I got on that one, but
man, even though you and I have completely different backgrounds, you grew up in Southern California, I grew up in Mexico City. I believe you skated, you surfed, and also you snowboarded. I snowboard a little bit, but you know, when I was a kid, skateboarding in Mexico City was not that popular. You know, all my friends, they didn't actually practice action sports. We didn't have access to the beach. So it was kind of tricky. However, I always felt attracted to action sports. Going to the stores, I used to read Thrasher magazine and Surfer. I was reading that even back then. We didn't have ESPN. We didn't have the X Games on cable television. But something attracted me to those sports. Maybe the designs, the clothing, the edge, the so exciting and stuff. But we shared these two passions, action sports and broadcasting. So back then, when you started skating and surfing, what was society's perception of skaters and surfers? Were you guys considered misfits or outcasts, or totally accepted?
Yeah, I look at, I've seen shirts that say, I liked it better when you hated us, when it refers to skateboarding.
Yeah.
Like skateboarding, when I started, was, where was it? That was about probably 1969, 1970. I got my first board and I started first of all, I would sit on the board and bomb the hill. Sitting down, I didn't even know how to stand up on it yet because I was scared to, because we had steel wheels. We had steel wheels and clay wheels where they're not forgiving like the urethane that they have nowadays, So skateboarding, because I lived on a ranch and we had this little bit of concrete area, and my brother and sister didn't do what I did, so I just kind of built a little ramp and just started skating it and jumping over sticks and landing on my board, and that was the big start of it for me. And then my dad, who was a lifeguard back in his old days, would take us to the beach, and he was a body surfer. So he would surf the waves with just his body, like dropped in. And so that I watched that. And so about 13, I started to try and stand up on a boogie board, those small little foam boards. And then that really got me into surfing. So I was I was surfing, I was skateboarding, and then my brother was a skier. So I put on skis before there was even snowboarding allowed anywhere. And so then I started skiing. And then as a skier, snowboarding got allowed on the mountain. So then I start seeing people whoosh by me on snowboards going, what's going on?
Yeah.
And I'm a surfer and a skateboarder on skis. And I'm in Los Angeles at Bear Mountain. This is a good story. I'm waiting in the lift line to get on the lift. Okay. Now you talked about Thrasher Magazine. Thrasher Magazine is an institution of skateboarding that's never gone away. And probably the most popular actual magazine that's still alive today. Is awesome. So I had this Thrasher patch on my ski pants. So it said Thrasher Magazine.
Yeah.
But I'm wearing skis, right? And snowboarding was just being allowed on the mountain. So I'm in the lift line waiting to get on the lift. And then I get on the chair, and the lift line guy looks at me and goes, "Why do you have a Thrasher patch and you have skis on?" And I had no response for this guy. I didn't have anything. I was like, but I skateboard and I surf and I rode the lift up and I skied back down, skied a couple more runs that day, and then sold my skis. And I've never been on a pair of skis since then. I've been a snowboarder 100% of the time. And that was back in, oh my gosh, that had to be like 88 or something, like 89 or something like that when I did that.
Were they wearing those fluorescent outfits?
Yep. I was guilty too. But I look at that moment, and that was a moment for me that I grew. And I love skiing. I mean, I don't ski anymore. I snowboard, but I announced skiing. I get it. I learned how. I taught my kids to learn how to ski first before I put them on a snowboard, except my son, who went straight to snowboarding. But my daughters, I taught them that way too as well. So like, I'm not hating on any of them, but it was like, as a person who stands sideways at surfing and skateboarding, it was natural for me to then stand sideways again on a snowboard. Now look, mountain biking is different because mountain biking is like skiing. You're standing forward. Your feet are on the pedal like this, one forward, one back. So there's actually regular foot and goofy foot on a bike, which some people don't even realize exists. So I feel like you see a lot of skiers or a lot of professional mountain bikers actually ski because it's very similar to facing forward than standing sideways.
True. Wow. Yeah. I completely agree. Snowboarding was a natural transition for you, not only the stance, the boards, but also the lifestyle. It was kind of like snowboarding was more rebellious. It was kind of like making a stand and everything. It was so cool. It's still cool.
We would go skate when the skate parks weren't being built yet, when they tore all the skate parks down before they rebuilt them all. We would skate street in the little town of Lompoc and the town of Santa Barbara. So we'd skate street and we'd find our little places, that these curbs or these loading docks that you could jump off, and all these places. And we would get kicked out of spots. You'd pull up in a spot and you'd start skating in front of a gas station because they're usually the good places to skate. And all of a sudden the owner comes running out, "Get out of here, get out of here." And you're just like, and it was almost exhilarating as a kid. Like, you and your buddies are laughing and you're running out of there with your skateboards and skating away until you go to the next spot and the same thing happens to you. It wasn't until one day I was skateboarding at the age of 24 someplace, and we had this curb and we were sliding the curb. We were having a good time, me and a couple of bros. We're all mid-20s at this point. This lady comes out and goes, "Can you guys go play somewhere else?" And I thought that was the funniest thing to ever hear.
Like, we're not playing, we're snowboarding.
Yeah, we're skaters, we're snowboarding. Like, so it was funny to hear her say that to us. Like, we're not playing, you know.
Exactly.
It's a sport. Like, when I go to the skate park now, they look at me at the skate park now, and they just like will say, "Oh, excuse me, sir," and they'll call me sir. And
it must be so weird because in your mind you haven't aged at all. Yeah. You know, you're still that kid, you know, going to the skate park or
in your mind.
In your mind. Your body, you know, is different because now you fall or something, and man, those broken bones are not fun.
Well, I can get hurt not falling now. I can just do something silly and not even fall and go, oh, my back, oh, my arm, what was that? Like, so
it's true. It's true.
I mean, it's part of the thing, but you have to, when you get older and you still want to do action sports, you got to try and stay in shape. You got to stay on your bike. You got to stay fit. You got to surf a lot. You got to skate a lot. You have to do the sports to be able to continue to do the sports. Yeah. I've noticed as I got older, it's not just automatic. You know, when you're 35 or, 30 years old or whatever, you can just go out there and you can go party for 3 days straight. And you can go surf all day long. But when you get older, you start losing that. So you got to keep your edge and, try stretch and do things like that. And, I've had a torn Achilles, broken collarbones, broken eardrum surfing, broken hand skateboarding. So I've done, I've hurt myself in pretty much all the sports, but yeah, it's being resilient and being smart when you get older and not like now. I don't try to learn any new tricks, skateboarding or snowboarding. I just do the ones I know how to do and I'm comfortable with.
Just maintain them. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can have fun. So I can skate or snowboard or surf with my kids and my wife and have a good time.
And all the professional athletes who are reaching almost the time of retirement, they agree with you. You have, even though you're not going to, practice at the same level, you need to stay involved. You need to stay on the bike. You need to stay on the surfboard, whatever. If that's your wish, if you want to stay somehow connected to the sports world, but it keeps you alive, I believe.
Oh, it does, and it's something I've done forever. And I go back to a day when I was 18 years old and my dad had told me one day that, why do you still skateboard? You're 18 years old. That sport is not going to take you anywhere. All your friends that do it, they're not going to go anywhere, and you're not going to go anywhere with them. Rest in peace, love my pops, but he didn't see that. He didn't see that as a viable thing that you could do to make a living. And I mean, skateboarding pretty much gave me my entire start in action sports was because I got hired by X Games to announce skateboarding. And that was it, because of my experience in the sport. So it was like, it was a no-brainer. My dad didn't see that back then, and he passed away before he got to see that, that's provided for my family for over 20 plus years now, doing something you love. And for me, I love action sports and I love announcing. To be able to do them both is the biggest honor I could ever have in my entire life, to be able to do something you enjoy 100% like I do with all the sports I do and all the things I announce.
Oh, it's a blessing. Definitely. I relate to that as well, because sometimes it's like, did they actually pay me to do this? I love this stuff. Yeah. I would do it for free. Also MMA. I love, come on sports. No. This is going to be in Spanish. So they won't know. Going back when you started at the X Games. So that was your first X Games.
2000.
Where in 2000, so you missed Tony Hawk's 900 for 1 year. 1 year. Yep. Did you notice a big difference in popularity of everything ever since the 900?
Oh yeah, and it's funny, because that's funny because you bring that up, because I was watching that at home, and that was one of the reasons that I thought to myself, man, these announcers that ESPN were using were their normal announcers. So I didn't think they were very good, because they weren't skateboard specific. They were like football, basketball.
They were like sportscasters, with suit and tie and stuff.
And it was crazy, because I was like, oh man, I know I'm better than these guys. And that is actually what made me think that I needed to get into this. This is what I need to do. But the 900 happening that year and the next year was so packed. That next year, because all that crazy stuff that went on in 99 with Tony leaping in the water, with Travis Pastrana flying his bike into the water, all that stuff that went on in 99.
Legendary.
Getting the job in 2000. And then it was funny, because in 2000, then I went on tour with Tony Hawk for 3 years. So that was the ESPN gigantic skate park tour. And so for 3
I remember
years,
that. Yeah.
2000, 2001, 2002, we toured and we went and surprised people at skate parks all over the
remember
US.
Undercover, or what was the name? Yeah.
It was Tony Hawk gigantic skate park tour. Big name, right? Super long name. But it was so awesome, because those tours were like, I was on tour with, Shaun White, Dave Mira, Kevin Robinson, guys that, from BMX legends. And then Shaun White, when he was a little kid, like 11 years old.
The Flying Tomato.
Yes. When he was like earning that name before he even got that name. So being on that with Tony for 3 years and traveling the world with him. And I knew Tony from when I worked for Powell Peralta, but reuniting and now actually working the tour and announcing, Sal Masakela and I announced that whole tour together and got to go to some amazing places. That's one of my most favorite memories is those 3 years of the first X Games, the 2 X Games in Philadelphia after that. Like, that's good stuff, man.
Wow. That's amazing, incredible stories. I'm so jealous. And my first X Games were in 2004 when the Big Air made its debut, and the X Games were already huge, massive.
That was
and
LA,
I was so
right?
impressed.
LA
That was
year,
LA.
right?
Yeah. Staples Center and Home Depot Center. So I got to cover both, and that was, a game changer for me because I was actually live. I was covering, I was interviewing, I was interacting with the athletes. So I felt part of the event, and it's different. That's why, doing it from a booth, I'm still grateful for the job, but it's different. The sensation is different.
It is. And that was the year you talk about 2004 when the mega ramp, the Big Air skateboard ramp was outside. That's before all that stuff got built, like the JW Marriott, the ESPN Zone, the Nokia Theater.
That was before. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that was all parking lot, because the great thing about when they came to LA at Staples Center is I was already working at Staples Center as the Clippers on-court announcer for the LA Clippers. So for me, I knew every person who worked in that stadium. And so I got to announce in that stadium for X Games, and I did it for the Clippers. So it was like, those few years we were in LA were a lot of fun because I did both jobs. Yeah,
it was so familiar to you that, you felt at home. It's great.
Oh my gosh, it was so awesome.
So how many X Games have you covered?
I mean, it's hard to say because you got to start counting international ones too, because I've done a lot over there in China as well, in Shanghai when it was Asian X Games. I did those, but
you did those. My goodness. So you've traveled everywhere.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I got to think probably over 40 international and national X Games I've done over the time. I've done been part of 6 Olympics, over 40 some odd, X Games, winter and summer combined, international, national. U.S. snowboard team, worked for them. U.S. free ski team, I've worked for them for years. A bunch of years as a Clippers announcer, Dodgers for the DJ. Like, it's been a great one too. It's been a lot of fun.
The most impressive resume in action sports broadcasting.
Oh, thank you, man. I definitely appreciate that.
Amigos, espero que estén disfrutando de este podcast. Hago una pausa rápido para recordarles que se inscriban a nuestro canal de YouTube, le den un like a este video y lo compartan para seguir creciendo este proyecto de Deportes de Acción. Ahora, si nos están escuchando en alguna plataforma como Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google y iHeartRadio, inscríbanse también para que reciban automáticamente los podcasts nuevos. No se diga más, volvamos a la entrevista. Give me your top 3 moments at X Games. I know it's very difficult, but just 3 moments.
Oh, boy, that's a tough one. Okay,
I know.
I would say probably let me give you 2, and then I'll figure out what the honorable mention is. Gotcha. Travis Pastrana's double backflip at Staples Center. Definitely one of my all-time favorites. Announcing that honor. Shaun White's perfect 100 at Aspen. Definitely one of my biggest ones as far as the winner goes. Would have been probably oh man, that's a tough one, man, to throw a third one in there, because I start looking at Big Air, I start looking at BMX, I start looking at all the different things that you see.
BMX Park or BMX Vert Ramp, so many.
Maybe go back to some of the early X Games, the first backflip too, like when Carey Hart and
Carey Hart,
yeah. When those guys were battling at it, that's probably one of them. But definitely Shaun White's perfect 100 is probably it. Probably
I would say top one. Mine, Travis Pastrana double backflip, because I was there and I was able to interview him right after. Shaun White's first gold medal in skateboarding at the vert ramp. That was really cool. Summer. And
wow, I was doing that one. I was
I know. Yeah, I remember your voice, but I was covering it for Deportes. And the third one, I think either Jamie Beswick's when he broke the 6 speed, I think or his 7th title at the Verb Ramp. That was insane. I mean, it's just incredible. I mean,
you know what? Hey,
yeah,
I got one of the lowlights, Jake Brown's crash on the
that's on the somber note, but it was also a successful story because he, ended up walking out. But I was so freaked out. I was freaked out.
Too. I threw my headphones down right there. Threw them down and said, "I'm done with this. This is crazy." And then I sat there for a second and put them back on and said, "Okay, calm down."
Yeah.
And then he walked away. And I know Jake pretty good because I did a bunch of Nitro Circus tours with him for about, 40 some odd stops. And Jake's a good dude. And we still talk about that day when those shoes blew off when he hit the ground. Man. Well, it was a big day.
And, given the fall, he only had like 2 or 3 injuries. I mean, that was honestly, I thought that was the first death in X Games history. Honestly, I thought, because I was also there. I was very close to the ramp, and the way he fell, it was so shocking. But then, man, what an inspiring story. Getting back up. And I remember Salema interviewing him after, the day after. He was already, in crutches and stuff, but he was fine.
No, he came back out the next day at Home Depot Center and got up on top of the dirt jump and waved to the crowd and addressed, and they gave him the mic. And that was
what
huge,
a time.
man.
Yeah. Another fun fact, my friend, we both covered the 2002 Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City. And I believe, were those your first Olympic Games?
Yeah, but my job was different. I wasn't an announcer. I was hired I was the lead music director for the 2002 Olympic Games. So my job out there in Salt Lake was to create the music library and then disperse that music library out to all my DJs. So my wife and I and another worker that worked with me on it, we all 3 worked together, created this most insane 88 back when CDs were good, 88 CDs, all different types of music, all edited, all perfect for stadium play. And we created a library. And they say it's probably one of the best libraries that was ever created for a music library for the Olympics. And that started it all off because we duplicated. We had the best sound systems. The DJs had the best equipment out there. It was really top notch. Salt Lake Olympics were the biggest ones. And as a manager out there, I got to go to all the venues. So I went and saw everything. I saw the USA sweep and snowboarding.
The short track speed skating. Remember Apollo Ono?
Yeah. I became a fan of that guy because I was DJing a few short track events in 2000 before the Olympics. And then I met Apollo, and I was like, just watching that kid, he's so good. Yeah.
Yeah,
so that's
something else.
Different job, but you know what? That was the big start for me right there.
Do you think Salt Lake City was a before and after for snowboarding? Or do you think that was the X Games role?
Well, no, I feel like the Olympics needed snowboarding. I mean, I feel like the Olympics needed snowboarding more than snowboarding needed the Olympics to a point. But the Olympics wanted to get younger, and they saw what X Games was doing with all the action sports. And X Games, had been holding the torch for action sports from the beginning, from like 95, or something like that when it all started. And so I think that the Olympics went, hey, look, let's take a page from this. And look, Nagano, they had it in Nagano in 98. Mm-hmm. That was when snowboarding first made the appearance. And from then on in, it's been one of the most highly rated competitions on all of the winter programs for the Olympics. You look at the ratings for snowboarding halfpipe has been through the roof through all the events. And that's why do you think they added slope style? Why do you think they added, big air too as well? It's goes hand in hand. And that's why skateboarding got put in for Tokyo. That's why surfing got put in for Tokyo. Even the BMX racing was in, but BMX freestyle wasn't. So So it's a big difference. And, good for the Olympics. You got to give the Olympics credit for realizing this and jumping on it and And for the people who say, does it ruin it? No, I've been a fan of the Olympics since I was a little kid. So I've always liked what the Olympics was all about. And that was back when watching skiing. But the competition factor and doing some of the biggest things in the world, like being part of the Olympics, has been a pretty amazing thing.
No doubt, no doubt. So our industry is amazing, but it also has its ups and downs. After some decline in popularity in, let's say, in the late 80s or early 90s, action sports had a massive growth after the introduction of the X Games in 1995. But what do you think is the current state of action sports, like 20 or more years after the debut of the X Games?
It's a tough one because people say that action sports, has not gotten it's not as popular as it was a few years ago. And I disagree with that to a point, because I think that it's made itself to what it is from what's been going on. You got to look at what's happened with action sports over the years, like from not being basically anywhere to being where it is now on the big stage. Like, can you imagine, thinking back to like 1990, even not that far ago, like ever picturing action sports being in the Olympics? Like, never. I don't think anyone ever thought that. In skateboarding being an Olympic sport,
ever.
I mean, you got to give credit for the surfing side of things, because Duke Kanamoka from Hawaii, the Duke was an Olympic medalist in swimming, and he was the godfather of modern day surfing. And if it wasn't for Duke was the guy who wanted to see surfing make it in the Olympics, and he made a ploy back then a long time ago in the 20s that he said surfing needs to be in the Olympics. And look how long it's taken, but surfing has made the Olympics too as well. And I can't wait to be out there in Tokyo being part of it.
Yeah, no, me too. I'm going to try to go at least to cover it for Nación de Acción, man.
Yeah.
But it's too tight. So I read an article on Forbes magazine about ESPN looking to sell the X Games.
Yeah.
Do you think the event should be owned by athletes, kind of like following the trend of other events like the Nitro Games or Air and Style and even SLS?
Oh, that's a tough one, man, because what was the number did I see? Was it $50 million or something like that they were looking to get for X Games?
I think so, yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, that's a tough one to think about, because you think about, okay, $50 million. You could create, how much could you create with $50 million without even putting X Games as the name on it? I mean, yeah, X Games is a proven entity.
Brand.
And it's a brand that like no other. But if you had $50 million, is that where you would invest it? Would you go and say, look, I'll buy the rights to X Games? So you're buying X Games, but that's not putting X Games on. That's not paying to put it on. That's just basically buying the name. So I don't think who's going to come out and have $50 million to not only buy X Games, but then also put on X Games for the cost of what it costs to put on X Games. And putting on X Games is not cheap. It costs a whole bunch of money, in the millions, just even set up venues before a spectator even walks in. So it's a tough call to see that them be able to sell that for $50 million. I just want to see X Games go on. So whatever can happen to make X Games continue, I think it needs to, because it's so important. Yeah,
it's a monster that needs the backing, the financial backing, and the infrastructure of a huge corporation like ESPN, and ESPN is owned by Disney. So, yeah, you're talking about a massive company to support the longevity of the X Games, I believe.
Yeah, and there's no certainty. There's been no dates announced after what we just had. So there's no dates for summer right now, because the last year of the contract, summertime, was Minneapolis, and we all know what happened in Minneapolis. That's pretty much the beginning of that. And so the X Games did not happen in Minneapolis, so that was the end of the contract. So X Games was already looking for the next place to host it before the pandemic even broke out. And those from what I heard, and whether I'm right or not, I heard Chicago and New Orleans were two cities that were vying to get X Games. But are they still vying to get X Games? I don't know what's going on with it, and I haven't heard any more information on a planned summer stop or even for next winter. So
do you think they should go back to Southern California, or do you think it's burned out, that market?
Boy, that's a tough one, because I mean, we all look at Southern California as the birthplace of action sports. So I think I still think it's the best place to go. But you can look, they were there for 10 years when their whole plan at the beginning was to go to a place for 2 years and go to another place for 2 years. Mm-hmm. But it was so successful in LA that LA wanted to keep them there, and they kept them there for 10 years. And, after 10 years, it was time to move on to go to a new place. So I'd like to see it go back to LA, but I think, does anyone want to tackle that right now? People are kind of more nervous about even putting on an event right now. So
no, right now it's too soon to think of that kind of like down the line plans.
But I hope it continues, man. I hope there's a winner in the Summer X Games from here on out. I mean, from years ago, my kids grew up with X Games. It's been something that's been so impactful in my life that I'd always like to see it continue and be part of it in any sort of way.
Yeah, for me too. So we can't talk about the X Games and Winter Olympics without mentioning the name Shaun White, of course, he became a global superstar. And you've been a witness of his entire career. What do you think is Shaun White's contribution for the industry?
Boy, hate him or love him, I'll tell you what, he has sure done a lot for action sports and snowboarding. I mean, there's a lot of people who don't like the guy and say he keeps to himself. He doesn't do this. He doesn't do that. He doesn't hang out with the other snowboarders, at the events or whatever. But I mean, he's put more eyes on television sets and more eyes paying attention to snowboarding and action sports than any other action sports athlete in the history of action sports. I mean,
even more than Tony Hawk?
I believe so. 100% more mainstream. I mean, Tony Hawk's a legend. Tony Hawk's a legend no matter what, but definitely Shaun White is a household name where, Tony Hawk's pretty close to that, but I think Shaun edges him out pretty hard when it comes to the Olympic medals and what have you, the way Shaun is right now. So, and believe me, he's coming back. He's looking at Beijing and he's eyeing Beijing because look,
so competitive.
Beijing's only 11 months away. So you look at that. So you got a Winter Olympics coming up in 11 months, but you have a Summer Olympics in Tokyo coming up here in July and August. So you're going to have 2 Olympics, in the next year, we're going to hold 2 Olympics. So, and I know Shaun, and I know he's been snowboarding, and everyone said he's going to compete next games. He was on the list. Then he said he got hurt. I think that he just does that, man. I feel like he just toys with people. Like, everybody's all, Shaun's in. We got to compete against Shaun. Well, Shaun's in. What are we going to do? And then last second, I'm injured. I'm pulling out. So, and it's not like he can't do the tricks. It's like if Shaun White goes out and does the same run that he won in Pyeongchang with, I mean, I feel like that run's still guaranteed a medal. Is it first? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not if somebody's putting 3 1440s in their run. If somebody's putting 3 1440s in their run and 2 1260s, that's definitely, if you want to make it a no-brainer, there's your gold medal right there.
Totally. But speaking of winning runs, there's a very famous video. I think we mentioned it earlier in the podcast where you're calling Shaun White's historic perfect 100.
It comes down to this. If he can beat a 94.5, he'll take third. A 96.25, he'll take number 2. What does Shaun White come away with on this one? It comes down to this. The final score. A perfect 100! Are you kidding me? A perfect 100! A perfect 100! Oh my goodness! I've never seen anything like it.
Was that in 2018?
Well, it depends which one you're talking about because I've had the pleasure of announcing Shaun on 2 perfect 100s.
2, yeah.
one was X Games, and I think that's 2012. But
12. Okay.
It's 2012 or 2014. I can't remember. But the other one was Snowmass, Aspen Snowmass, and that was the U.S. Grand Prix, and that was 2018, right before Pyeongchang. That was pretty much sealed the deal. He got the perfect 100 on that one. And the thing is, everybody complained about his perfect 100 at X Games because they say he dragged his hand.
Touched, yeah.
Yeah, so he did, okay. But still, on that day, nobody had that run in their bag. No one could do that run. So on that day, even though he dragged his hand, I still think it's a perfect 100. Okay, if not, what's a 99.99? But, who cares? He still won. But that perfect 100, everybody goes, he dragged his hand, and that can't be perfect. Well, in Aspen Snowmass, he came out, got a perfect 100. There was no drag to the hand, and that sealed the deal for him in Aspen Snowmass. So it's like, he's proved it. He's backed it up. He means a lot to snowboarding. He's going to go for Beijing. Hopefully, he stays healthy enough to compete and make the team and compete again for the U.S. Because if you're in the U.S. and you're a fan, you want U.S. to win gold medals, why wouldn't you want Shaun White competing in halfpipe? I mean, you're almost guaranteed he's going to get some sort of medal because he's that good.
Yeah, exactly. What did he throw, or was he the only athlete throwing the double McTwist?
The double McTwist. Okay, so the double Mickey 12, they call that. So no, that's a McTwist 1260. Yeah. So
gotcha.
No, people can do it, but I think he was the only one. I'd have to go back and look. I think he might have been the only one at that point to do it. But the thing is, it's the switchback tricks. The hardest way to spin on snowboarding is switch backside. And that, you talk to any judge, you talk to any pro snowboarder, switch backside. And Scotty James has that switch backside 12, but I haven't seen, I don't know who's trying to switch back 14, but if you had a switch backside 14 in your run, 2 12.6s and another 14 in your run, that's probably a gold medal or silver. But like I said before, if you have 5 hits in that pipe and you're able to put 2 or 3 1440s and 2 or 3 12.6s, whatever the combo is, then that's a gold medal too. So that's where it is. It's just, you just count the rotations nowadays and say, this is what it needs. What's what you need to win.
No, it's becoming so impressive. The Japanese riders, and speaking of that international expansion, for many years, the U.S. was a driving force in action sports, period, in skateboarding, surfing. But then came the Australians and the Canadians. But now we see a boom of countries like Japan and China in snowboarding and skateboarding, the Brazilian storm in surfing and skate also. And in Latin America, we see very good BMX riders. We see very good skaters. Do you think the time of one single country dominating these sports is gone, is over?
Yep, 100%. Yeah. Because like you just said, everyone else is catching up now. Like, because when I referred to Southern California as the birthplace of action sports, so a lot of your skateboarders all came out of the Southern California area, right? So it's they closed the gap. First of all, the Chinese have closed the gap big time when it comes to sports because their athletes are very driven. They're very, very hard workers, 100%. And I'm not saying U.S. isn't either, but they want to catch up. They're the ones playing catch up because the U.S. is the one who has to be dethroned because they've been the top dog forever. But now you're seeing in snowboarding, you got Norway, you got Canada, you have all these other countries that are good now. And like you talked about the Brazilian Storm in skateboarding, that came on big time in like the 90s. And there's so many good Brazilians. And then in surfing wise, like you talked about Brazilian Storm, surfing, as you put it. Yeah. Well, first it started in skateboarding and now they're good at surfing too as well. I mean, they have an amazing country. They got amazing waves. Like no one country, I think, can dominate anymore. You're always going to have those ones that come out of anywhere, the guys that come out of nowhere and just all of a sudden transcend the sports like we see today.
So true, so true. And one thing that gives you incredible perspective of how the action sports industry is going is because you cover all these events around the world, including Latin America. How was your experience calling surfing at the Lima Panamerican Games, which I have a picture of you in the background?
That's a funny pick, but you know what? That's realistic because that Punta Roca, that surf spot there, is a heavy surf spot, and we got to see some big waves come through there. And the Brazilians, the Peruvians, I mean, the Americans, people were ripping, and that look on my face is after announcing out there. And the cool thing about Peru is after the surfing competition was over, I stayed around and stayed for another 10 days and went surfing myself and just went in, just ate ceviche every day and surfed every day.
That's delicious. Peruvian ceviche is the best.
Yeah, that was such a good time to get to spend that much time in Peru. And then, you know, later on in the year, I got to go from Peru. I got to go to El Salvador for ISA for the SUP World Championships and got to surf out there and hang out there. So, man, I've just been so fortunate to get to go to all these amazing places. Like, and anytime that you go to a place like this and you can take in the culture like I did in Peru and go surfing and be part of it and feel what it's like to be a Peruvian surfer or whatever, it just feels good. And you get to see so many parts of the world. And that way you can kind of compare where you live and what you see from day to day with the rest of the world. It's really rad just to be able to travel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're almost reaching the end of this episode. It's been a fascinating, incredible conversation. But before we go, you know, in addition to your broadcasting and announcing gigs, you're also an entrepreneur. I mean, you're a radio guy, but also you have a podcast. It's called the Snowboard Project, right? How's it going?
Yeah. So Snowboard Project is something that I was kind of doing with a good friend of mine, Mark Sullivan, and him and I have announced together for years for the U.S. snowboard team. So he's a really good buddy of mine, but that's really his project. And
okay.
It's been a great project too, because he's really done so many good interviews with so many different people of snowboarding, whether it be, you know, guys that started it, former athletes, guys that, you know, backwoods guys. So Snowboard Project is a real good project to check out. If you're a snowboarder, I'll tell you, listen to the podcast. Mark Sullivan, good friend of mine. He also does an event called Tailgate Alaska up in Alaska where we go up there and ride together. So
nice.
Yeah, so I was a little bit part of that, but haven't been doing that one. I just been doing my own radio show now here in Santa Barbara, but you can get it too online. Anyone can listen to it. It's on ktyd.com. So ktyd.com.
We'll put the address.
Yeah, put that on there. And people can tune in. On the West Coast, I'm on from 7 to midnight.
Even in Mexico? Can we hear it from Mexico?
Yeah, cool. Totally. You just go on the website. I'm on 7 to midnight. You can rock out to Brad J.
Also, you have an online course, right? On Udemy.
Yeah. Tame Your Talent.
Nice.
So Tame Your Talent's been something that my wife and I worked on for a long time. And it's just I have a really extensive course, 3 different levels of it, where it teaches people who are trying to break into announcing some of the tricks of the trade that I learned over the years to make me better at announcing. I just break them out. I give all the tips. I give all the trades. So people who are getting into announcing for the first time, they don't have to take 20 years like I did to learn all the stuff. They can just kind of take the videos, take the class, and learn like that. So it's called Tame Your Talent. That's also on YouTube too as well. So you can message me there on Tame Your Talent.
I'll check it out. Oops. Parece que perdimos la conexión con Brad, pero bueno, ya estábamos llegando al final del programa. Así es que le agradecemos desde acá muchísimo a Brad J por acompañarnos en este episodio especial del podcast de Nación de Acción. Soy George X y nos vemos en la próxima.